Sophia Mangara, first-time delegate and speaker. Lewisham and Deptford CLP, one of the most ethnically diverse constituencies in the UK. We are standing here today with our Windrush generations and all affected by the Tories' racist, hostile environment policy. As a South African anti-apartheid activist and a lifelong anti-racist campaigner, I know the struggle is urgent. We don't know how many thousands of Windrush and other Commonwealth citizens who were invited here to rebuild this country are victims of this racist policy, immigration policy. Many have lost their jobs, their homes, their pensions, and access to NHS services and other services. Some were deported. Sajid Javid has broken his promise. He announced a few days ago that those entitled to citizenships will be deported if a crime is committed. This is modern-day transportation, and we must not accept it. Thank you. Some victims have died as a result of this hostile environment. Today, we remember Dexter Bristol and, most recently, our sister Sarah O'Connor, a Windrush victim and a campaigner. Both died before they got justice. This hostile environment must be abolished, and the time is now. May and Javid want to create a pound shop compensation for victims. This further undermines our value and our contributions to British society. Victims must be fully compensated, including for pain and suffering. Hardship payments must be given immediately. We say end to detention, end all deportations, end policies of destitution. We call on the next Labour government to scrap all racist immigration laws, such as the 2014 Immigration Act, as our Shadow Home Secretary, Diane Abbott, has pledged. Women have led protests in detention to expose ill treatment, appalling conditions and racist sexual harassment, forced on hunger strike. There have been 7 in the last 10 years, and it's not good enough. We must stop and all detention. That's why we are calling for an end to all immigration detention centres. This hostile environment dehumanises us all. Those affected are our friends, our neighbours, our loved ones, our communities. Our contribution as black and migrant people goes back centuries, from slavery up until today. We believe that we have a right to stay, a right to dignity, and a right to justice now, not tomorrow. Let's do this for our sister Sarah and Dexter and all those deprived of their rights. Let's stand up together with our leader, Jeremy Corbyn, against all forms of racism, including Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Labour is the anti-racist party, and don't let anyone say anything else. I call on the chair to call as many BME delegates to speak to this motion. They're lining up out there, and they want to speak and have their voices heard. And please do make this your mission. Thank you, conference. Thank you, conference. I move this motion. Please support it. Solidarity forever with Windrush.
Thank you. Next contemporary composite 9 on Palestine to be moved by Harlow CLP, and could Wolverhampton South West CLP be ready to second?
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Colin Monaghan, Harlow delegate, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. Today, it is my honour and my privilege to speak on behalf of the Palestinian people. During the course of the debate, I want you to use your imagination. Right now, 2 babies are being born in Jerusalem. One to Palestinian parents, the other to Israeli parents. Those babies don't know that they are Palestinian and Israeli. They had no part creating the problems of the world they have been born into, and they have no knowledge of the tragedies that have gone before. They will both bring love into their parents' hearts, like nothing they have ever known. And for the next 10 to 12 weeks, they will both rob their parents of sleep, leaving their parents more tired than they thought possible. A tiredness that every parent remembers all too well. Throughout this debate, I want you to remember those 2 babies, small, precious, innocent. I want you to realise that this motion is about wanting those babies to have a better future than the futures filled with pain, suffering and hatred. Let's put their futures on a different trajectory to the one that's been mapped out for them. But for that to happen, for there to be a joint future for the next generation, there has to be an acceptance of the tragedies of the past. In 1948, the Palestinian people suffered the tragedy of the Nakba, when the majority of Palestinian people were forcibly displaced from their homes. There are those that are nervous about the word Nakba, but the Nakba did happen, and those people were forcibly removed from their homes. And there has to be a recognition of that for those 2 babies to have a future together. That tragedy that the Palestinians suffered cannot be written out of history, it cannot be downplayed, and it must not be ignored. Conference, we cannot be silent on this. Being silent might be the easy thing to do, but it's not the right thing to do. As socialists, we are rightly proud of the achievements of the Attlee government of the late 40s, the creation of the NHS and the welfare state. But conference, this tragedy happened on our watch. We were there. We saw it unfold. And for that reason, we cannot close our eyes or turn away. Our movement has a proud history of standing up for the oppressed. And that tradition must continue. Not because it's the easy thing to do, but because it's the right thing to do. I grew up in the East End of London, in a little place called Wapping. My nan lived up the road in Stepney, in a street called Cable Street. Oh, you've heard of it? I'm glad. I learnt to ride my bike on that street. In 1936, members of my family, along with thousands of other East Enders, trade unionists and members of the Labour movement, stood on the barricades and in front of police on horseback. Not because it was the easy thing to do, but because it was the right thing to do. Conference, if we are silent, we are complicit. The tragedy that the Palestinian people suffered is not just some footnote in history. It is real. It goes on till this day. That must be recognised. The Palestinian people cannot be left alone in the darkness. Their story must be told. A wise man once said, "It is better to light a single candle than to curse the darkness." Conference, I want you to light a candle today. A candle so bright that they can see it from here to Washington. I want us to send a message to Mr. Trump that cutting the funding to the UNRWA, the humanitarian agency set up by the UN to assist these people in exile, born homeless, born stateless, in refugee camps, will not crush their spirit. It will not lessen their resolve to return home. Expelling Palestinian diplomats will not make them disappear like a snowflake in the hot sun. We see that you seek to push the Palestinian people and the truth of their tragedy into the darkness. And I want us to say with one voice that we will not let the tragedies of the Palestinian people go quietly into the night. We will rage against the dying of the light. Not because it's an easy thing to do, but because it's the right thing to do.
Delegate, your time's up, I'm sorry. Thank
My
you very
time's
much.
not up. I'm speaking for the Palestinian people. I've got a couple more lines and I'm going to say them. And if you want me off this stage, you're going to have to get security up here. And they better send an army, because EastEnders, like Palestinians, don't go down easy. And I'll leave you on this. Keep in mind those two babies. They deserve a better future than the one mapped out for them. I want us to say this to every Palestinian. We have heard you calling from the darkness, and we cannot and we will not ignore you or your tragedy. Brothers, sisters, conference, I'll move.